Hello. How is everyone? Waiting for folks to pop on. Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Hopefully, let me know if you can hear me okay. I don't know if you heard that. That is my daughter's. She picked this crazy message for her to when I get a message. Let's see. I see Cheryl is here. Cheryl, do you want me to use the Tiny Health account or your personal account? And then we will get started as folks come on. This is going to be so exciting. If you can just let me know which one to use to request, or did you request to join? Let me see. Or whichever one, either Cheryl or the Tiny Health account to request it. Tiny. Okay, perfect. Let me see. I think I just, folks come. There we go.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I kept clicking on the button and nothing happened. It was
Oh, just technology
I
is
know.
both good and bad sometimes. So, so I'm excited for this conversation. I see folks are joining. This is going to be so exciting. So, as folks join, well, you know how I am. So, well, and I'm going to say full disclosure, I'm a medical advisor for Tiny Health. I also have some investment interest as well. But as I said in the post, I do not ever, I'm very, very, very selective about anything that I work with. So I'm not going to put my name to anything that I don't believe has value. So if my name is behind it, I believe it's something that's worthwhile. So I'm really excited to talk to Cheryl about Tiny Health, the company, the microbiome, her journey, all of that good, great stuff. So Cheryl, I will let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what made you start Tiny Health.
Thank you. And of course, I want to start by saying that we're so honored to have you on our medical board. Truly, you were so careful in the companies you choose to affiliate with. So we are truly honored and grateful to have you on board. So Tiny Health is a microbiome testing company that specializes in women who are pregnant, trying to conceive, as well as young babies. But now pretty much we've opened up to anyone, even adults who are not trying to conceive or pregnant can test. Older children between 3 to 17 can test as well. But we do specialize in this special first 1,000 days of a baby's life, which basically starts in conception. And the reason I started this company about 2 years ago was because I had, with my first daughter, 4 years ago, a C-section, and I was basically just wondering, oh, what would that mean for her lifelong health? Would there, be any consequences? And I found a lot of gut microbiome papers, sort of in scientific journals, showing that C-section babies may have a higher risk for eczema, food allergies, as well as asthma. So I was like, oh no, I didn't know it would affect her lifelong health. And then I learned about the first 1,000 days. Basically, even in the womb, what the mom eats and does, nutrition-wise and stress-wise, affects the baby. And then if the baby at birth bypasses the mom's birth canal, so the C-section, they're kind of not going through the mom's vaginal tract. They're actually not being colonized by the mom's vaginal microbe. And so I learned 4 years ago that I didn't know that my vaginal microbes were so important for the baby's lifelong health. And
Mm-hmm.
additionally, it's the gut microbes of the mom too. So then I was like, how does this transfer to the baby? Then I learned that when you're pushing in labor and maybe some fecal fluid is coming out and that inoculates baby, and that's like basically so essential for their health, not just in the early days, but lifelong. So then my story then went, okay, shoot, I will likely have a C-section because she was breached. Then what does this mean? Like, is she doomed? But then I found all these other papers on restoring baby's gut and how there is a way to, you know, by the time she's 1 year old, if the C-section signature at birth is gone, that means her risk for these conditions, allergic conditions, is de-risked by X factor. So I was like, okay, what do I do? And I found out that exclusively breastfeeding, some probiotics, yada, yada. There's a full list. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try all these things. So basically, I was trying all these things, and I wasn't sure if I was doing like the right things, if it was enough to restore her gut. Then fast forward, when my son was born, 2 years later, I decided to start this company because I wanted to. I found out that there were gut tests to test, but they were all for adults, and none were suited for babies. And babies are not like small adults; they are completely different in their microbiome setup. And there was no company who can do this test. So when my son was born, I decided to start the company. And I wanted to see what his microbes were like, because this time I had a vaginal birth with my son. In fact, I had him at home, so I had a VBAC. And you know, I've seen. So then I also included testing my microbes during pregnancy, which we can talk about,
Yep.
and how that's related to baby. And so yeah, that's a long way of
Yep.
basically telling my story, why I started the company, and what it's about.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I always feel like oftentimes when people start things like that are important to them and from their heart that they want to share with other people, like that just always is nice to know that you weren't starting it because like, ooh, let me get in on this hot thing to make money. You wanted to solve a problem for yourself and for other people.
Exactly.
A really interesting one, by the way. So I have been fascinated with the microbiome way back when I was in academic medicine. Some of my research was, thinking about the microbiome. It's like amazing to me that we have 10 times as many organisms that are on our skin, in our vaginas, in our gut, that combination as we do human cells. Like we're walking around with this whole collection of bacteria and organisms, and I think it's kind of the wave of the future to know how we interact with them in order to best support our health. And I think it's great to think about it like, of course, pregnancy and trying to conceive is a great time to start like, these are some things that I want to think about, and especially how it affects your baby. I know you have tons of folks who want to know about how it affects like allergy and asthma. And of course, we're going to talk about vaginal seeding and all that good, great stuff too. And I forgot to say, if anybody has questions, drop them in the question box. We're going to save plenty of time for questions. I know there were tons of great questions, but I want us to touch on a couple of things first before we get started. So I'm looking behind me for the question. So why is it important, you think, to test the gut and vaginal microbiomes during pregnancy or even before you get pregnant?
And yes, and this is a really important question that's near and dear to my heart, because um, I when I was looking for this test for babies, I couldn't find one. But then I also found a lot of studies around this specific bifidobacteria called Bifidobacteria infantis, that the study showed that should be dominating the baby's gut in the first year. And the sad news about this bacteria is that 95% of Western moms don't have it anymore, or are female, don't have it anymore. Uh,
Mm.
Either due to, we don't know why, it's a missing microbe. Only 5% of the population has it. Either due to um, maybe modern lifestyle, maybe antibiotic use, because antibiotics, depending on whether it's broad spectrum or narrow spectrum, could wipe out the whole gut, and whether it restores completely, we don't know. We do know that bifidobacteria is one of those bacteria that gets depleted or more sensitive to antibiotics. So that could be a reason. It could be more C-section rates in the mom themselves. So then I was like, okay, I want to test my gut when I was pregnant, pretty much with my son, because I wasn't looking 4 years ago with my daughter, my older daughter. And I found out that I don't have B. infantis. So I'm like, oh no, then I'm probably not going to be able to transfer it to my baby. So then I was starting to take probiotics myself in hopes of building my levels up, and then hopefully transferring to baby. And if I was really worried about it, and I was with my son because my daughter had eczema. Again, I'm not sure if it's due to the C-section, but she did have a little bit of eczema. It's really mild though, so I think all the steps I took to restore her gut helped. So I gave my son this probiotic with this specific strain for 3 weeks.
Mhm.
I was just in case, you know. So now kind of like what we know about, there's not just one, there's basically 4 bifidobacteria strains that we would like to see in the baby's gut. So when we do a gut test for the mom who's pregnant or trying to conceive, that's the number one thing we look out for, is these 4 specific strains of bifidobacteria, which I'll tell you, it's probably Greek to you, but it's Infantis, Breve, Longum, and Bifidum. And they're commonly found in most probiotics in the market, but not all of them, right? So you want to, when you're pregnant, if you are taking a probiotic, you want to be taking the right strains. Otherwise, it won't really calm the baby's gut, or it may not be the best for the baby's health. So that's kind of why I do a gut test. But there's obviously other things we want to measure too. If the mom has higher gut inflammation, she might be more prone to perhaps gestational diabetes during pregnancy, kind of one thing that you want to watch out for. And, you know, lifelong health for the mom too, right? There are other biomarkers, like just regular healthy biomarkers, that you want to measure to ensure that you are in the healthiest state for your baby's health as well, because it's correlated. And then you want to do a vaginal test, because there's different types of, like, vaginal types. Broadly speaking, there's five types, and there are kind of types that are connected with a lower risk in pregnancy. And the vaginal microbiome for pregnancy and labor is actually, there's more science backing it than there is gut health for pregnancy, actually. And, you know, there is one type, which is type 4, that is connected with a slightly higher risk for STDs or preterm labor, for HPV and whatnot. So one where, you know, ideally we kind of know the vaginal microbiome earlier, so that we can take steps to address it. And it's connected with a higher pH in the vagina. And so you want to take steps to make sure that that vaginal pH is lower during pregnancy and birth as well.
Yeah, that was one of the questions actually that someone, and we can get to it a little bit later, about vaginal pH and how that relates to the microbiome. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting that we talked about beforehand is that I know there's a lot out there about vaginal birth and the microbiome, and that's preferred. But in all of your data, you have actually found that for some people who have vaginal birth, the microbiome doesn't actually end up being supportive for the baby. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
A vaginal birth. So that's the thing, I like, you know, we have hundreds and hundreds of data points now, and we also have thousands of data points from papers that we're getting raw data from and processing. So Tiny Health's sort of benchmark is based on a very solid foundation of scientific literature outside, including our own data. And in literature, we see that C-section births are connected with a baby gut type that is not as ideal for their lifelong health. But not all C-sections are like that, right? Like some C-sections are better than other C-sections. Again, we don't know why. Maybe if you have gone through labor and the water has released and that baby gets some inoculation of your microbes, and then you finally end up in an emergency C-section, maybe that has some benefits. We don't quite know yet what the mechanisms are. So some moms who labor and then end up in a C-section, don't fret. Maybe there are some benefits still to the baby. And then on the other hand, vaginal births that, again, these are all like anecdotal or hypothetical. Maybe fast births, maybe there were more vaginal exams at a hospital, we don't know. The babies sometimes look like C-section babies. Again, can't give you a reason, but by and large, statistically, C-section babies do end up with a less ideal gut type than a vaginally born baby. So I don't want to say by no means, we still want to see a vaginal birth. We just,
for multiple reasons, yeah.
For multiple reasons, not just the microbiome, right? But you don't know until you test, which is why, like, I wanted to bring this company. To me, testing gives you the transparency in knowing what you as the mom, what microbes you have or maybe are lacking, and you can rectify it for your baby. And when your baby is born, the first sample we would encourage you to take is a 7-day sample. if possible, because then you would truly see what seeded the baby. What were the pioneering microbes that seeded the baby's gut at birth? We know from science that seeding is crucial. The pioneering microbes are there to do its job, and then it disappears really quickly and the new microbes take over. And ultimately in the first year, you want that bifidobacteria, one of the 4 strains, to be dominating their gut, like 80%, maybe 60, 80% of their gut,
Mhm.
with a small percentage of unfriendly bacteria. So this is a surprising fact. 1 to 5% of unfriendly pathogenic bacteria is actually healthy for baby because it trains their immune system. So we see some babies that are too perfect, even like no unfriendly bacteria at all. Maybe they're over sanitizing. Maybe it's too clean, and those babies also end up having higher risk for allergies. So there is, in the first year, like a clear picture of exactly kind of the beneficial and unfriendly balance, or like ratio that you want to see in a baby to ensure their lifelong health. And therefore, yeah, it's kind of like, to me, I'm like more, I guess, a type A mom, that I just want to know so that I can take control and
Right.
if I need. If I don't need, then
Right.
be assured that my baby's fine.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, the like what the vaginal microbiome is during pregnancy, maybe that has some implications for what people think about with vaginal seeding. So for those who don't know, vaginal seeding is when people take a swab of what's in the vagina and swab it around on the baby's skin, the baby's mouth, even, I believe, if you have a C-section. But is it is it potentially, well, first, what are your thoughts on vaginal seeding and then like the approach of how this test may or may not be able to help you in that decision making process?
I'm so glad you asked this, and I bet you get some of these questions quite a lot too on your
Mhm.
own. Certainly, when this study came out by Dr. Maria Gloria, like years ago, and this is also something I came across when I was researching my daughter's C-section. What can I do? And one of the papers I found was this vaginal seeding method. And I took it to my OBGYN and my midwife, and they were like, you can do it at your own risk. We're not going to do it for you because it's not conclusively helpful for clinical practice.
Well,
Uh,
honestly, I just think, like, I don't understand why we get so worked up about it. Like, babies come through the vagina. Like, it's not like we're swabbing anything. It's like the same thing that they would have been exposed to. So, from my personal perspective, I'm like, I don't know why folks get worked up about it.
Yeah. So yeah, ultimately I mean, I guess you would know better. Like there's definitely a liability factor that.
Mhm.
But thankfully my OBGYN at the time was pretty relaxed about it. And he said, well, I won't do it, but if you want your midwife to do it, feel free to get her to do it. So I did. I soaked the swab for an hour in my vagina before the C-section. And when she came out, within the first 2 minutes, swabbed it all over, mimicking the birth canal, right? Like that route. So to me, it felt, when I read the study, I knew it was a very small cohort, like I think 9 moms or something like that. I was perfectly comfortable doing it because I felt like it was just something so natural. Um, now, like this is before I knew anything about a vaginal microbiome test or state types that I mentioned earlier. There is one state that, like type 4, when I say state, sorry, I meant community state types. CSTs is the scientific term. There's CST 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 types. CST 4 is the one that I mentioned that is the higher pH, connected with a higher pH. And you don't want a higher pH, which is more alkali, because that creates an environment that's more from like um, that is the opportunistic pathogens are
Mhm.
like alkaline environment. They don't like acidic environments, and that also means that you're low in lactobacillus. This common, again, very common probiotic like lactobacillus that you'll find in the market. Lactobacillus creates lactic acid, so lactic. Hopefully you remember that. That creates an acidic environment, and that's what your vaginal microbiome should be, and that prevents pathogenic bacteria from harboring and kind of multiplying. So if you are CST type 4, um, you probably don't want to do a vaginal seeding because your vaginal microbiome is probably mostly imbalance. So that's one thing that I think that's the difference. Is like, I
Mhm.
think maybe vaginal seeding can be, you know, clinical in the future, but with this vaginal microbiome test. So that's one thing, like, you know, if you're type 1, type 2, feel free to do it. And then type 3 is the one that's variable, which is interesting. So it is one where, so remember I mentioned the lower the pH, the better. So like a healthy vaginal microbiome is 3.5 to 4.5. So technically you can go out if you want a cheap way to test, buy a pH strip and, you know, measure yourself and see
Right.
pH in some sense, but you don't know what microbes are there still. If you are type 1 or 2, then it's connected with a lower pH. If you're type 3, it's slightly on the higher, it's still acidic, but like borderline, and it could tip over to a higher pH, depending on what other microbes are there. So type 3 is a variable type. So that's kind of why I think even vaginal microbiome testing is so important when you're trying to conceive, because that's also, there's some papers connecting like IVF success, for example, with types, and then during pregnancy as well, if you do happen to, for whatever reason, need a C-section and are considering a vaginal swab, if you're type 1, 2, like, I think go for it. Type 3 really depends on what else is around it. Type 4, don't do it. Type 5 is the other category where it really, it's like a unique, rare vaginal type. So then that is also dependent on what is there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Love that. Love that. So I want to save some time for questions, but I want to say really quickly that about when you do these tests, guys, with Tiny Health, they're not just giving you like a report like here's all your bacteria. There's actually actionable things that you can do to help change. So they help guide you through some of the suggestions. Some of the low-hanging, well, shouldn't say low-hanging fruit, but breastfeeding will be one, at least for babies, that can be important. I know breastfeeding can be challenging, but I guess my point is saying that like all is not lost. Like there are things that you can do in order to make changes, whether you're pregnant or even for your baby. If your baby starts off with a microbiome that isn't as favorable, there are things that you can do. Is that correct?
100%. And this is why this company was created. I mean, I don't think parents just want to get a report showing what's in their gut, the baby, without any actionable items to do. And in pregnancy, we have so many tests during pregnancy, and a lot of it are genetic testing, DNA testing, and we can't change our genes. But with microbiome, you can really change it and turn it around. And so, like, we provide actionable steps from a dietary perspective, supplement perspective, and also lifestyle changes. Both for the mom, if you test, if the mom tests, even if some dads also want to test, because the family microbe affects the baby. And in early life, like in baby, like in the first 6 months, their diet is really mostly just breast milk or formula, and even ratio of whether it's fully breastfed or fully formula fed, you can see the microbiome effects in the baby quite clearly. I think for breastfeeding moms, it's really motivating to see if the baby wasn't born with the ideal gut type, you can truly change it with your breast milk if you had the right microbes in your own gut, because the gut microbes from the mom, believe it or not, continues to transfer to baby through the breast milk. And this is the found that's kind of why even with a C-section, your baby missed those microbes, but you can get rid of the C-section signature through exclusively breastfeeding for as long as you can, and that, and if the mom has healthy microbes, it can continue to transfer, and we see that in our tests. And it's very empowering for parents. And then some parents also don't want to give their babies probiotics directly in the first 6 months for whatever reasons, maybe additives in probiotics, or they're not sure if they should be feeding anything other than breast milk. The mom takes it, if it's the right kind, we see it transferring to baby too through the tests. And so it's just nice to have that confirmation and that comfort in knowing that the stuff that you're doing, the steps you're taking is truly making a positive difference.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. All right, I'm going to pull up some questions. We got several beforehand, and then I'm going to get to as many as we can. Let's, someone asked, will this live be saved? 1000%. Yes, we will definitely save it so you can come back to it either on my account or the Tiny Health account. Okay, so let's ask, someone said, currently pregnant, can I still work on my microbiome for this pregnancy? I'm 27 weeks.
Yeah, so our test, I have to say, it takes about 4 weeks to get back. So it is some time. It's never too late. Again, if you plan to breastfeed, you will continue to transfer your gut microbes to your baby through breastfeeding. So I think there is a little bit of time, like, now, like I would say do it right now to see what's going on. It's like, but we would encourage as soon as you are pregnant, or even before, there's no harm in, as you're trying to conceive, already do the test. So what that means is there's just more room and time to make adjustments if needed.
Gotcha. Yep, love it. And someone said, is this a test you do from home? And I assume yes. Yes, you do it from home.
100%. Where's my, oh, here, I have a tiny help. We send you an at-home test kit, and the swab looks like this. It's super easy for a stool test. You just wipe as usual, and you take a little bit of stool sample, just a tiny bit. And when you have a baby, you're sampling from the baby's diaper. And the vaginal test is also the same swab that the OBGYN uses for a GBS test, for example. So it's no different than that.
Yep. And I will say, you all stay tuned, because I'm going to be doing my own test. And so I'm going to share those results live when we do, like, unbox the test, not when I'm actually doing the test. Like unboxing the test and the results. So I'm excited too. All right. So what other questions? There were several good questions. I'm going to just kind of put this in the category of, where is it? My water was broken. Oh, I think I took it off. Let's just answer the general question of antibiotics and how that affects the microbiome, both for moms and for babies. In pregnancy, I get this a lot around the question of GBS. And then for babies, if babies have infections and things like that. So how have you found that impacts the microbiome?
So it depends. I think we see antibiotics during labor or after labor with the baby, either if the baby's in NICU or require antibiotics in early life. That definitely affects the baby's microbiome more than, say, during pregnancy. Like the further it is away, because we do get some moms with antibiotics for UTI during pregnancy, and we don't know. So we have actually in our gut test for babies, we have this antibiotics resistance signature metric. So if the baby or you just came off of antibiotics, we see that index being really high. And over time that goes down, but we see underlying there's more variety of pathogenic species. And it really depends. It depends on if it's broad spectrum, meaning it kills every single bacteria. If it's spectrum, it is very specific to a certain bacteria. So that's kind of why one thing I've learned to do is whenever your doctor prescribes antibiotics, ask them if it's broad or narrow. Does it have to be broad? Is it that serious? I believe UTI is a narrow spectrum one because it's only targeted, right? You probably know better. And so narrow spectrum are not, we don't see a huge effect on the microbiome as much. And then as far as GBS, like, if you are GBS positive and you do need antibiotics during labor, I believe there are studies showing that under, was it 12 hours, I believe, there's no effects in that study. The study didn't show anything. If you had to be on ongoing antibiotics post 12 hours, there is an effect. So this is from the existing studies. From what we see some underlying like signature, but again, as you breastfeed, again, breastfeeding is just so, or breast milk is so magical, it does really help clear out and push out the pathogenic like bacteria. So because when antibiotics are involved, basically it creates an environment that is more that is hostile for beneficial microbes, and then there's more pathogenic microbes coming back and antibiotic resistant microbes coming back too, right? But breast milk can continue to restore that and push those like unfriendly microbes out. And so that is literally the number one thing to heal, but also probiotics. Again, one of the 4 probiotics that I mentioned, the 4 strains, basically those 4 strains, the milk, the HMOs or the milk sugars in breast milk are actually food or prebiotics to these 4 bacteria that you want to see in the baby's gut. So that's kind of why the bacteria that should be dominating the baby's gut for lifelong health and HMOs in breast milk are like especially formulated to live and survive like conditions in the baby's gut and bleed.
Right.
And in fact, if you can or choose not to breastfeed, there are some formulas in the market that has HMOs added to now. They're at much smaller quantities, but at least there's some there that can feed this bacteria to make sure it grows.
Great, 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 great. So I would say, like, to add my 2 cents, like, you shouldn't like not take antibiotics if you need them, but you do want to be like selective. Like sometimes OBGYNs, we may like, oh, maybe you have a UTI and just, kind of reflexively write a prescription. You can wait until what's called a culture is done to see if you actually have a UTI before you take the medication. You don't just have to like take it right away. And then also like for GBS, if you need it, you need it. That's the recommendation. But then you have more information and knowledge that, hey, I'm going to do my best to breastfeed for as long as I can, or maybe I'm going to take a probiotic. This is all about giving you information so you can control the things that you can control. So don't like
Yeah.
skip medicines that you shouldn't take, but
What
just you have better information. Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. So for example, I didn't have UTI during pregnancy, but I was asked to take antibiotics because my urine test came back higher than usual. I didn't have it. So at the time, I just did it. But because I didn't understand quite at the time what antibiotics could maybe do to my gut and my baby's gut. But if going back in time now, I think I would have waited, like what you said, and maybe drank more cranberry juice. And there's a lot of natural ways to deal with UTI. Thankfully, I didn't have GBS. But again, it's one of those tests you do at 37 weeks. So
Mhm.
your baby can come anytime. It's so late
Right.
to find out you have GBS, and once you have it, you're not never required to. I'm sure, and you always mention that it's
Yeah.
have the power to say no, but most likely you may have to do antibiotics. Our test can show if you may have GBS earlier. So if you just the awareness that you may have this strep B in your gut or vaginal, you can take action earlier on to try to get rid of it. So when you do the actual test at 37 weeks, hopefully it's not there anymore. Like I up garlic, there's some remedies that you can do, like eat more garlic, raw garlic, and there's some probiotics that you can take to try to reduce your risk for that. So that's why I encourage testing earlier so that you have the awareness rather than wait to the last minute to know if you may be at risk for certain things.
Yes, love it, love it. So let's get to a couple more questions. We talked about vaginal pH. So do twins make a difference? Someone asked if twins make a difference in terms of data, or, things that you see about the microbiome.
So fascinating. We love twin samples. We just reviewed a case yesterday with twin samples, both born via C-section. And oftentimes we've had quite a few twins now. They look almost identical.
Mm.
Twins, there are differences, but very minor. And this one that we reviewed, actually one had eczema and one didn't have eczema. And we saw this one microbe that was present in one and not the other. So there's no paper supporting anything to do with that, but maybe over time, when we have hundreds of twin samples, we can see, and twin is the best like control, right? It's kind of they're in same genes, same environment, same birth, but microbiome may be different, maybe because one came out vaginally and the second one maybe had to have a C-section or reached, and we hear those stories a lot. So depending on how the birth, like what happened in the twin birth, that could change the microbiome a little bit. So that's the really interesting part. But by and large, like 99% of the microbiomes end up being the same. In fact, your microbiome will probably look the same with whoever you're living with. If you have a roommate, your husband, your mom, eventually you're eating and living the same, you're in the same environment. So actually it matters what microbe someone has in the household actually matters because you're interacting.
Right, 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 right. This is all just like we're all connected in ways that we can't even don't always even realize. Let's see. We talked about, I think we got all the major questions. Someone just put in, what probiotics do you recommend for babies and moms? And do you recommend taking probiotics? I don't know, or prebiotics,
Mhm.
prebiotics. So maybe and we can make this the last question. How about what's the difference between prebiotics and probiotics? And then what do you recommend?
Yeah, this is a great question to end with. Prebiotics are the food to the bacteria. So prebiotics are the food to the probiotics. Probiotic basically is what do you call them? A name for like microbes that are beneficial or can show clinical benefits to the health of an individual. That's the definition of probiotics. So we don't believe, to be honest, is also my personal belief that I don't think probiotics should be administered to every single human, like adult or baby. Some babies' gut already have really good like natural probiotics from the mom or environment or whatever it is. They don't need any more. In fact, if you give a baby who already has great gut health probiotics, it may inhibit their own like natural probiotics from kind of like propagating, right? And may I don't know, like I don't think it's ever a really bad thing, but I would just be, I would not give every baby probiotic. Some babies, like I mentioned, like maybe to do with the birth or the mom's health, need a little extra support. Those cases, we would recommend a probiotic. And not all probiotics in the market are equal. We get so many customers now come in with each customer that buys a report, they tell us what probiotics they're currently taking or are planning to take, and we actually go out and find what strains are in those probiotics and see if we can see them in our tests, and so that if it's actually working or not. Now, this probiotic topic is quite large, but I'll try to make it simple. Like, they're not meant to really colonize an adult's gut because you and I are frankly quite old and our guts are really mature. So the probiotic that we're taking can be transiently giving us a health benefit, but they're not when we sequence your gut, we're not going to find them in really large quantities. And sometimes we don't find them at all. It doesn't mean it's useless. It just means that you have to keep taking it for it to give you benefit. But for babies, if you do give a baby a probiotic, and the right kind, and for the reason of maybe pushing out really pathogenic stuff in your baby, it should colonize the baby's gut. So there's a different purpose for giving a baby a probiotic. You have to give the right kind, and not every kind is the same. So we see some babies being given like lactobacillus probiotics, which has been clinically proven to help with colic or eczema and some stuff like that. But it's only transiently helping them, so you have to keep giving it to them to see the symptomatic relief. If you give them a probiotic that has bifidobacteria, one of the 4 strains I mentioned, it will colonize, and it probably permanently, I don't want to say permanent, that's maybe too much of a promise, but it should colonize the majority of the baby's gut for a while. So ideally, like I mentioned it earlier in the IG, I gave my baby 3 weeks of this one probiotic, and it stuck with him for a whole year, 2 years. I'm still breastfeeding him now at 2 years, and I still see that in his gut. It kind of stays on. So you don't have to keep giving them every single month. Sometimes you can give them, and if you see it being at a really ideal level, you can stop, right? So it's hard. Like, that's kind of why I feel like probiotics should not be standard of care. Really, the testing should be the standard of care, and the probiotic should be dependent on what the results tell you.
I absolutely love this. Like, it's really about taking information and really personalizing it to what you need instead of like a one size fits all approach for everyone. It's really trying to give you information so you can take the best actions for your health or for your baby's health, not just, take whatever this, that, and other.
Yeah, you don't need it. You don't need it, right? If you
Yeah,
need it,
exactly.
it should really help.
So, well, Cheryl, thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to drop the Tiny Health link right here. And in the comments. Give me a second because I feel like I'm an old lady typing, but I'm not that old. It's easy, tinyhealth.com. And if you use the code Dr. Nicole 25, you get $25 off your test.
Yay.
Yes, yes, yes. So I am excited about that. And wait, let's see, posted there. And I will pin that so folks can, so that'll be at the top. It's tinyhealth.com and use the code Dr. Nicole 25. And like I said, we'll be back and I'll have to do, after I do my own testing and share my results. And I'm almost like, oh God, I hope my stuff is not terrible. But I'm excited to find out. And if anyone has any other suggestions or topics that they want to hear about this, we are happy to come back and talk about it again. This is like, I can nerd out on this type of stuff for forever. So I hope you all found it helpful. And I saw again posted, someone asked, will the video be posted? Yes, I promise it'll be saved and you can come back and watch it later. So, all right.
I had so much fun, Nicole, and I'm really excited to see your samples.
Yes, me too. All right. Well, thanks so much, Cheryl. I appreciate it. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.